Really honored to be here and to provide opening prayer for the training and the webinar today. So feel free to pray in your own pray your own prayers. So we're just going to go ahead and pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. Father, we thank you for who you are. You are the same yesterday and forever. And we just acknowledge you. We thank you for everything you have done. Thank you for your grace. Just as the sun comes up, Father, your grace is shown every single day in every single place and area. Today we honor our veterans, worthy men and women who gave their best when they were called upon to serve and protect their country. We pray that you have blessed them for their unselfish service and the continuous struggle to preserve our freedoms, our safety, and our country's heritage for us all. Bless them abundantly for the hardships they faced, for the sacrifices they made, for their many different contributions to America's victory over oppression. We respect them, we thank them, we honor them. We are proud of them. We pray that you will watch over these special people and bless them with peace and happiness. We just pray that we just put this webinar in your hands, and we just pray that you will bless webinar today. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Good. Thank you, Earlson. Thank you for your words of encouragement as part of your prayer. All right. First slide, Ava. While Ava is setting up on her end, I want to share a couple of words before we get started. And across the country on Monday, we observed on the Veterans Day. Tribal communities also had their ceremonies take place to honor and acknowledge veterans who have passed on, veterans who are now at home, and our men and women who are serving as we get together today. I thought it would only be proper that as part of the National Native American Heritage Month, that we too, here at AVERTAC, on the campus of Northern Arizona University, recognize and have the veterans share with us their stories. So I would like to welcome any veterans that are out there. What I also share with you is that anytime during my next presentation, if you have something to share with the audience or a comment to make, please let me know, and we'll give you the time to share what you have to say and to share with the group. I also want to make sure that we recognize that NAU does have its own land acknowledgement of the tribes within the state of Arizona. Arizona has 22 federally recognized tribes, and more recently, our official NAU acknowledgement was made and recognized by the community at large, and it reads, Northern Arizona University sits at the base of the San Francisco Peaks on homelands sacred to Native Americans throughout the region. We honor their past, present, and future generations who have lived here for millennia and will forever call this place home. In Hopi, we call the San Francisco Peaks Nuvatuke'ovi, snow-capped mountains. And the other tribes also have their tribal names for the San Francisco Peaks. Next slide, please. So today, I am sharing a short slide presentation to review our history regarding warrior men and women who served our tribal communities and the transition into the U.S. Armed Services. Next slide. The learning objective for today is number 1, learn about the history and involvement of Native Americans in the U.S. Armed Forces. Learning objective 2, hear Native American veteran stories about their time in military service. And three, understand the purpose of honoring Native American veterans through traditional ceremonies, feasts, and prayers. Next slide, please. I recognize that in reviewing traditional warrior traditions, I learned quite a bit, but today's time just doesn't allow me to um, share every information that I thought would be worth sharing with you. So as I pointed out earlier, we're taking a brief look at the past. In traditional Native American cultures, chiefs played a key role to protect their people, preserve their culture, and save their ancestral homelands, and determining the tribe's future. Some tribes have a warrior tradition, but not all tribes do. Some tribes have traditions that consider war and violence as unjustifiable. Some traditions most often are about balance between war and peace. Today, each of the 574 federally recognized tribes has their own history, culture, traditions, belief systems, and point of view on engagement in the U.S. military service. As we have been sharing throughout our webinar trainings and at our conference presentation, that of the 574 federally recognized tribes, 93 currently are providing local, tribally appropriate VR services. But we also recognize that approximately 150 tribes are benefiting from the tribal VR services funded by RSA. Next slide, please. So here I'm showing two pictures of Native American warriors and chiefs. The picture on the left is Chief Sitting Bull, who was a Sioux warrior from the Lakota tribe. And I read he fought his first battle at age 14 and quickly became known for his bravery and skill in combat. In 1857, he was named a tribal war chief. He led the Sioux against the U.S. troops in a number of battles, most famously the Battle of the Little Bighorn in 1876, commonly referred to as Custer's Land Stand. Sitting Bull subsequently spent 5 years in exile in Canada, and in 1881, impending starvation led him to surrender to the U.S. government. And after 2 years as a prisoner of war, he settled on the Standing Rock Reservation, which is now in North Dakota. On the right hand of the screen, that is a picture of Chief Joseph from the Nez Perce tribe. His history reveals to us that he received international media coverage for his daring attempt to lead his followers to Canada when the U.S. government tried to force his tribe to move to a reservation. His father, Chief Joseph the Elder, had tried his best to maintain cordial relations with the whites. He had even converted to Christianity and had taken up the Christian name Joseph, which he shared with his son. He had signed a treaty with the U.S. government that promised millions of acres of land to the Nez Perce tribe. But by the time his father died and Chief Joseph took over the reins of leadership, the relationship between the government and the natives had become increasingly turbulent. When the government tried to forcibly remove the tribes from their motherland and relocate to a reservation, he led his followers on a march toward Canada. They were relentlessly pursued by the U.S. Army in what came to be known as the Nez Perce War. Next slide, please. I've also learned that in our traditional culture that we did have female warriors who actually fought along the side of the native warriors or who served in the background to provide the support, the supplies necessary, and more importantly, to protect the tribal communities, to protect their culture, their religion, and most importantly, their ancestral lands. Next slide, please. Here we will view a short video entitled Why We Serve, Stories of Native American Service. Ava, please start the video.
Ekomumai Ikena Hale. Welcome to this sacred place.
I remember everything happening so quickly. I left for boot camp. I was in training.
Uncle Sam thought I was having too much fun on the beach, and so I was drafted in 1966. I volunteered to go into combat. Within a month, I was on my way to Vietnam.
I was shown to my barracks, and I looked around the room and I thought, this is it. This is my life now.
We have a long history of Native veterans, more per capita than any other race.
My brother was in the Air Force.
4 generations in the United States Marine Corps.
And my son was in the Navy after me.
My grandfather was a Coast Guard officer.
I am the first veteran of my family.
I think it's really important to challenge the stereotype of what a Native veteran is.
It was either serve or be a drug dealer.
Wanted to go to college, but didn't have the money.
Not everyone had that choice.
Sometimes it feels really romanticized when the costs of war are really high.
I always thought that I could transfer some of my luck to my sons. The day my son was killed, he was carrying this flag in combat. That was hard to accept.
We are the First Nation, and we will defend our land, no matter what.
I feel like I'm just doing what's right or what needs to be done, or maybe what I feel I'm called to do.
The skills of being a good soldier is something you learn. But to be a good warrior, it's something deeper than that. It's about your inner spirit, what things are important to you to the point that you will fight for them.
It's something that I feel pumping through my veins, and it's what I breathe and live every day.
Thank you, Ava. Moving on to the next slide, please. What you see on the screen is part of the history of our Native men and women serving in the U.S. Armed Forces. I want to make sure that this it's not inclusive of all the military service where our Native folks were a part of the conflict. So I'm showing a history that starts with the American Revolutionary War in 1775 up to 1783. There was also a time where there was a long history of Native American wars against the British, which I don't show on the screen. So if you view this history of our Native American men and women in the U.S. Armed Forces, it gives us a real good picture as to the length of time our Native people have contributed to protecting what we call the United States of America. It's also important to recognize that there are conflicts that are currently occurring in other countries. And we have active Native American men and women who are either currently deployed or are preparing for the next events that may possibly take place. As you're seeing this information on the screen, it may bring back to you your family traditions regarding your family veterans. It may bring back to you stories of your traditional history of Native warriors and women. So as we move throughout today's webinar, and as we get to the part about stories from our Native veterans, both men and women, we invite you to share with us your family history regarding your family veterans. Next slide, please. I thought it would be important to share with you some of the historical events as related to our history in serving in the U.S. Armed Forces. I think the key to this slide is that even though we were not considered U.S. citizens, and it was not until 1924 that through the act of the U.S. Congress that we were given the full right to citizenship. But I want to share with you, going back throughout the Native American history, that in 1819, the U.S. Congress passed the Civilization Fund Act that encouraged American education be provided to indigenous societies and enforced the civilization process. In 1860 to 1978, Native American children removed from their homes and families and placed in boarding schools operated by the federal government and the churches. And here I'd like to share a little bit of my history regarding the boarding school. Both of my parents attended the Phoenix Indian Boarding School located in Phoenix, Arizona. While they didn't graduate from the boarding school, in the fall of 1969, I followed my older brother and spent 4 years down in Phoenix at the boarding school and graduated in 1997. I understand that the Phoenix Indian Boarding School had been in operation for over 100 years. And while I have some good memories regarding my experience at the boarding school, I can say that being away from home for 9 months at a time did give me the opportunity to be in my tribal community and to participate in the ceremonies, and more importantly, to become more ingrained in my Hopi culture. The Indian Citizen Act of 1924 was an act of the U.S. Congress that Native people born within the country won the right to full citizenship. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 permitted Native Americans the right to vote. In 1978, American Indian Religious Freedom Act that protected the right of Native Americans to exercise their traditional religion by ensuring access to sites, use, and possession of sacred objects, and the freedom to worship through ceremonial and traditional rites. I believe what we have been doing here at the Institute for Human Development and receiving funds from RSA, one of our primary objectives was to make sure that we assist tribes to look at their cultural background, to look at their ceremonies, their language, their stories, and to come together to design a VR program that reflects the cultural background of the tribe itself. And we have been successful in doing that. And you may also recall that during the KNAR conferences, we make sure that we include what we consider important, our rituals and ceremonies, and the sharing of stories, the sharing of our meals, and making sure that we are there for each other. Next slide, please. With the following 3 slides, I want to share a little bit about the Native American code talkers. Well, the Navajo tribe, I believe, were more well known regarding their service in the U.S. Armed Forces. In my review of available literature, I actually found some information regarding code talkers from other tribes. And I recognize that in addition to the three tribes of code talkers, I want to make sure that it is a known fact that there were code talkers from other tribes as well. So what we see on the screen is the Choctaw code talkers. Next slide, please. On the screen, you see a picture of the Navajo tribal code talkers. And on the third screen, we have a set of photographs regarding the Hopi tribal code talkers. In memorial of the Hopi veterans, we have what we call the Hopi Veterans Memorial Center, located in Kapuskmobi, Arizona. Next slide, please. As I shared earlier, Native American culture that include female warriors. And what you see on the screen is a picture of Lori Payestiwa. You may have heard about her that she was part of the U.S. Army and who was killed during the Iraq War. She died in the same Iraq attack in which fellow soldiers Toshana Johnson was present. Payestiwa was the first Native American woman to die in combat while serving in the U.S. military, and the first women in the U.S. military killed in the Iraq War. Down in Phoenix, there is a mountain called the Arizona Payestiwa Peak, which replaced the derogatory term of Squaw Peak. On the right hand screen, you see several ladies who are part of the Native American Warrior Society. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So what you see in the prior slide is that on November 11th, 2020, a dedication of the National Native American Veterans Memorial was held in Washington, D.C. And this was in recognition of Native Americans' long, proud, and distinguished tradition of service in the armed forces of the United States. The U.S. Congress passed the Native American Memorial Establishment Act. The legislation authorized the National Museum of the American Indian to create a memorial that would give all Americans the opportunity to learn of the proud and courage tradition of service of Native Americans in the armed forces of the United States. The memorial honors all American Indian, Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiian veterans. The memorial was designed by Harvey Pratt from the Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes. I happened to view on the internet the ceremony that was taking place on this particular date, and I recognized that there were a couple of folks who were part of the ceremony that were part of the TVR staff. And perhaps someone can shed more light on what actually took place as part of this historic event. Next slide, please. Here is a photograph from one of our KNR conferences. If you recall, in all of our KNR conferences, as part of the ceremony, our tribal veterans have graciously accepted our invitation to be a part of the ceremony. And here they are photographed as part of the posting of the flags of the United States and several tribal flags. So I believe in this sense, the Tribal Vote Rehab Program, the KNR organizations, and our partners have always made it important to recognize the contribution of our Native American men and women veterans. Next slide, please. So at this time, we will move on to the storytelling from our Native American veterans. And Jamie Emanuel, the ABRTAC VR coordinator, will facilitate this part of the webinar. Jamie?
Thank you so much, Dr. Gaseoma, for the historical aspect of Native Americans and their participation in the United States military and their service to this country. And I learned a lot from the information you shared with us. So thank you so much for that. At this time, we're going to focus on the storytelling part of today's webinar. And we have two gentlemen here today that said they would be glad to join us and share their personal stories about their military service to this country. So first I want to introduce Mr. Lyle Cook. For those of you that do not know Lyle, he's a very instrumental part of our Avers community. And Lyle joins us from the Good River people there in South Dakota. Lyle is the director of the Finds Their Place Vocational Rehabilitation Services Project in South Dakota. And Lyle also served in the United States Armed Forces Army. And Lyle, I believe you said that you were 3 years active duty and then again 3 years reserve duty. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Thanks so much for joining us today, Lyle. We appreciate your time. I know you're busy as a director, so it's probably hard to get the time to join events like this. But, you know, we really wanted to celebrate our Native American veterans today, and we really appreciate you joining us and sharing your personal story. I understand, let's see, you were enlisted in November of 1980. Can you share a little bit with us about that?
Well, it wasn't, how would you say this? I was just finishing trade school and I graduated and, but I was in sheet metal. So that's heating and ductwork, air conditioning ductwork. And I had to get into a internship, apprenticeship, but unfortunately that was never obtained. So I was just kind of twiddling my thumbs, and one of my relatives, he was going back out to Idaho. And so I said, well, I'll jump in with you because I knew people out there. And so I stayed with those people for a while, and then they kind of asked me, well, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I don't know. I said, I got a certificate and I need an apprenticeship, but I can't get a job without the apprenticeship. So I just thought about it and said, well, my father, he served in World War II, and I had an older brother, he went in the military too. So I said, well, I might as well just join the Army. And that's how I ended up in the service as a way to survive, so to speak, but also um, I guess carry on the military service in our family. So that's kind of how I ended up in the service. I enlisted in well, I was sworn in Boise, Idaho. I was thinking about that. I said, "Oh, if I'm going to join the military," uh, my brother was telling me his basic training was down in South Carolina. I said, "I don't want to go down there. It's too dang hot." So I said, "Well, maybe I'm over in Idaho when I enlist. That they'll send me somewhere over here." No, they sent me down there to South Carolina. Boy, was it hot. So that's kind of, but I guess a short story to kind of share on that.
Thank you so much, Lyle. And it's just really, can I say, for myself personally, to be, it's an honor to be here with you today. You know, through the years that KNR always looked up to you and continue to do so. So I just want to thank you again for being with us. You had said in the information that you provided us that you had family members who served as well.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little more about that?
Well, I did have a great grandpa. He was a U.S. Army Scout. He was one of the last ones. That was before World War One. So that was towards the end of the 1800s. And he was already passed on by the time when I was born. So I never really got to know him that well. And but my father, he joined in World War II. He was at the military police, but he was over in Germany. And unfortunately, my father passed when I was in military basic training. So I never really got to get a deep history of his military service. I just know that he served. So it was ironic that I was in the service and I came home for my father's funeral. So I was everybody's kind of checking me out because I had long hair, but in the military they don't let you keep your long hair. So my head was shaved and I was just wearing the military uniform. So um, it was quite a change for a lot of relatives and stuff. And then like I said, my older brother, he joined as well. He was in the infantry, but he was stationed in Germany. So I'm not sure what his, they call it MOS, but it's just kind of like what we enlisted for. So I can't remember what his MOS was, but I believe he was just an infantryman. So that's kind of, oh, I have a uncle that he was KIA in Vietnam. And I was just listening to our radio station earlier and he mentioned the Vietnam veterans and the memorial there in Washington, D.C. And like Lee was talking about, I was fortunate to be there not for that dedication, but for a lot of things to follow after. So I got to visit the wall, take a picture, and take an etching of his name inscribed in that Vietnam Veterans Wall there. And fortunately, that wall's been brought into South Dakota and North Dakota. So our veterans group here, we were called upon to help support the agency or the organization that brought that wall here. So we would pull guard duty and as well as participate in the tribal celebration that was being held in conjunction with that event. So
thank you, Lyle, for sharing that with us. I know that had to have been an emotional service for you and probably brought back a lot of memories. You mentioned culture and some of the ceremony that was a part of your support network. And you had told us that your family and community held cultural events, to sort of support you along your way. And um, can you share with us a little bit about, um, tribal veterans groups that you're involved with, or any type of cultural activities that, helped you along your way during your active duty service and when you returned home?
Well, like I mentioned, when I was in the military and my father passing, when I came home for that, it was in December of that year. And my aunt, my dad's sister, she kept me with her and her family. And there was, they live out in the country, a community called Roscoe, and having a powwow. So they told me about it. So I went over there and I was kind of hanging around outside, and here, as I was visiting with others, I was informed. They said, "Well, there's two others that are home on leave as well," and they told me their names, and I knew them both. So we started talking, and then as we were visiting, talking about our basic training and our AIT and where we're going to be stationed, and here they came out and they said, "We're having an honor song, and we're going to honor the three of you veterans." So, well, it was a good thing they were there, because I don't know if I could have handled that by myself, but it's very powerful and overwhelming to, we're always taught to be humble. And so when you're recognized like that, it's overpowering sometimes. So I was very grateful that the other two were there to stand by my side. And so they sang an honor song, and they let us out so that the people could come and give us encouragement. And so that was pretty good, because that was at the beginning of my military service. And
That's
there was, prayers are always being said for our veterans, and they were said for us as well. So, and then in addition to that, when I got out of the service, it was probably within, maybe 3 years, when I came back to South Dakota, or actually I was out in Colorado, Denver, Colorado, and I started attending the community powwow gatherings and stuff going on. And when they found out, the veterans group found out that I was a veteran, they asked me to come participate with their group. So that was the American Indian Veterans of Colorado. And so I started, that's how I started on our native side, so to speak. I was done with my military service. So I started doing that, and then eventually I moved home, and our Cheyenne River Sioux tribe, as it's called in English, they had 3 veterans groups. So I started helping to support those, and in those endeavors, there's a lot of things that go on out here in South Dakota, and it's regarding our Black Hills. And we're always trying to, well, not, we're always trying, we're continuously working to get that returned back to our people. Not just, there's 9 reservations in South Dakota, and we're all intertwined. The government separated our tribes because we were such a large group of people. And so the better way to handle our people was to separate us. But in regards to the Black Hills, we all stand together on that issue. And so for many times, as a veteran and other veterans, we stood together with our people. We led them in the walks and the protests. And so that was kind of that's things that still go on today. As I was running around getting signatures and coming back to the office, there was a couple young ladies talking on our tribal radio about a meeting today, and they mentioned the Black Hills. So that it's good to hear our young people are still carrying on that fight. And so that's just kind of a little bit about what we do.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lyle. That's wonderful to hear. It just blessed my heart to hear you talk about it so reverently. And not only do you feel like that you got the support that you needed from your fellow veterans, but then you turned around and gave that support back to other veterans as well. And thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to mention was Lee had mentioned the code talkers. In World War one of my grandpa's, his name was Joe or Job Hyok. That's on my mom's side. He was a World War One code talker. So there was many code talkers out there. I was fortunate with our reservation here. I was designated as the tribal liaison to the U.S. Mint to coordinate the recognition of our tribal members, enrolled tribal members during that honoring. So that was one of the many events that I went to out in Washington, D.C. So I just wanted to share that as well.
Thank you, Lyle. That's beautiful to hear. And I love that we're storytelling and sharing these personal stories in that way, so that individuals can really see things from your experiences and how you experience that. So thank you so much for being with us today. Our second veteran that's going to join us today, his name is Roscoe Emanuel. I know him as Arnold Emanuel, and I think some of you do as well. He joins us from the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina. He's affiliated with the Lumbee tribe's vocational rehab services project. He is a retired North Carolina State Highway Patrolman, and he was enlisted in the United States Army for 4 years. And so, Roscoe, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate you taking the time to be on with us today. How you doing?
I'm blessed. I'm doing well. Thank you for the opportunity to join in on your process today. It's an honor and a privilege. And I do thank you for inviting me.
Yes, sir. We're glad to have you. So you shared with us that you joined the Army in February of 1968. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, and I was drafted in 1968, and I served 2 years, 68 and 69. In February of 68, I went to Fort Bragg out at Fayetteville, North Carolina. I had 4 weeks of basic training, and then after that, I went to Fort Dix, New Jersey for 2 weeks of advanced infantry training. And then after that, I went to Fort Benning, Georgia for 10 days of parachute training. And then after that, I had 30 days vacation. And from there, I went to Saigon, Vietnam.
Oh my goodness. Wow. So you were drafted into the Army, sent to basic training, and then you were sent to jump school. I'm sorry, you said you were sent to advanced infantry training, and then immediately sent to jump school, and then sent straight to Vietnam.
That's correct.
Wow. So you got 90 whole days of training. Bless your heart. That had to have been just a shock to the system.
Well, I really didn't want to go, but I felt like by living here in America that I was obligated to go. And my best friend, he went 3 months ahead of me, and he was in Vietnam 3 months before I got there. And I was the only one in my unit that was native. Uh, there was a lot of different ethnic groups, but I was the only native in my unit. In my platoon, there was only 9. I had a staff sergeant, and then I was the line sergeant, and then we had a corporal, and then we had the rest were privates and corporals.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Wow, I can't get over it was just 90 days of training, and then there you go, sent straight to Vietnam. You also shared with us that you had family members that served in the military as well. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
I did. My father, he was in World War II. He served in France and Germany, and he he uh, he was the corporal when he got out, and I was very proud of him. He stayed the whole time, so and he was blessed, I guess, to come. I never got to talk to him a whole lot about what happened to him in the service because I was very young. I was only 11 when he got killed. So I didn't get to talk to him a whole lot about his military service. But he did serve, and I felt like I was obligated to go. I wanted to go to Canada like a lot of other people, but I felt more obligated to go and serve. And so I did.
Thank you so much for your service. And I'm sorry to hear about your father. And I'm just honored to hear about his service as well to his country. We had talked a little bit about Native ceremonies, any preparation, prior to you. And thanks for the clarification on the fact that you were actually drafted into the military. You didn't enlist, but you were drafted. And so you probably didn't have a whole lot of preparation time. But can you share a little bit about what it was like when you were preparing to leave, and maybe some things in your community? You had told us about some services that you participated in prior to leaving for Vietnam.
Yes. Well, when I came home from a 30-day leave, while I was home, my pastor of my church and the deacons and the elders and the lay members and all, they had a ceremony for me where they prayed for me, anointed me, and prayed over me, and we had songs and dances and all of that for uh, me to leave and go. And I felt those prayers and everything the whole time I was gone. I sure did appreciate that.
Thank you for sharing that story with us. And I'm sure it had to be a scary time for you as a young man, just 18 years of age and heading off to war. And you had shared with us that that back then no one really had telephones in the homes, and really the only access to any communication with your family was through the U.S. Postal Mail service, and even that was very spotty at times.
That's correct. I'd probably get a letter from home from my mother about maybe once, sometimes twice a month. It'd take about 2 or 3 weeks for the mail to go and come, but it was good to hear from her. Uh, and I always encouraged her. She always wanted to know how I was doing, what was I doing, and you know how inquisitive mothers are. I just told her to pray I was doing good, and I was safe, and I was just doing all right, not to worry. And she'd tell me how much she loved me. That was really encouragement. And she'd tell me the people at home were praying for me and always asking about me and wanted me to be safe and come back home. And after I got there, my best friend, that he went 3 months ahead of me. When I got there in April, he got killed in May. And I didn't find out about it till I got back home from Vietnam because they didn't want me to know that anything had happened to him. So that was a really hard blow when I got back and found out that he had got killed. And I really liked him. I really loved him. He was a dear friend. We went all the way through school together. We done a lot of things together. We went to powwows and everything together. And I really miss him even till today.
I'm sorry to hear that that happened and that you lost your best friend during the war. And I imagine your mother probably didn't want to tell you because she wanted to protect you probably from that while you were serving. But I'm sorry to hear that. Can you share a little bit about your military experience? You had said that, the time that you were at Vietnam or in Vietnam was probably some of the most violent and active fighting time of that war. You were there during what was called the Tet Offensive. And so you had shared a little bit about that. And if you don't want to talk about it, I understand. But I do know that you said that really affected you.
Yes, it was a terrible time. And to say I was not afraid, I'd be not being truthful. I was afraid a lot. But I put my faith in God that God was going to take care of me, and He did. And like I said, there was a lot of times that I could have perished, but I didn't, and I'm thankful for that. Even a lot of my friends, I saw them perish, and it was really hard. There was a lot of times I had two friends while I was there. I was there for 15 months, and two of them got killed on the last day that they were there. So that was really something that would worry on you, and it would really stay on your mind. Were you going to be able to make it, or were you going to be able to leave? Especially when someone that you know and really close to uh, gets killed with such short time. They're supposed to leave the next day and get killed the day before. That's really hard to deal with.
Yes, sir. Thank you and I'm sure that it brings up a lot of emotion and memory for you. And I appreciate you taking the time to share that in our storytelling section today. I'd like to end on a good note with what you did share with us, though, was that you said you had made some really good friends in your platoon, and that was the most positive. You said that y'all shared stories and laughed and really just tried to encourage each other each day. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, it helped you morale. It kept you going, and like I said, you had to be close knit. You had to look out for one another, and and you didn't want a whole lot of they won't, being in a war is different than just living every day here. It puts you in such a stress. Until you get out of it, you don't really realize how much stress you're under. And but like I said, the things that you do whenever we get a break and come into base camp and get a day or two off, we'd joke and play games, and we just enjoy ourselves and relax, and that was really good for us. And like I said, we had so many different ones. One of my best friends there he was a hillbilly from Tennessee, and he'd tell me, say, "Ewins is something else. I'll tell you that right now. But I'm gonna look out for you. I want Ewins to come see me now whenever we get on." And so I do go see him now occasionally, and I really enjoy him and I love him right on.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I love that. Two of the most unlikely ended up being the best of friends during the war. Thank you so much for being with us today, and I do appreciate you sharing your story with us and your personal experience during the war. Lee, I think we're going to move on. to the next portion of today's celebration of our Native American veterans. So I'll turn it back over to you.
Lee, you're muted.
Okay, thank you both Lyle and Arnold for sharing your stories with us. I would suppose that it took some courage and encouragement to be with us today and to hear from you firsthand your experiences in serving and protecting our country. At this time, I would like for my cousin, Dr. Darold Joseph, to share his thoughts and to share what he has to share today. And when he's done, I would like to have us review any of the comments and read through those, as well as giving the opportunity for any of our viewers to make verbal comments. Daryl? Yeah, you can introduce yourself.
All right. Hello, everyone. Let's see, I'm gonna move this up just a little bit. It's great to be here with you all today. Thank you to both the gentlemen. I really do honor and appreciate you for sharing your stories and for your service, and to all the veterans who are online with us today as well, and to all our community members who are also currently in the service and have served for our country. I appreciate my son, culturally and Hopi Ali is my son, and then also the AverTac staff for sharing the history. It's really important, at least for me, that we are reminded of the places that we come from. Also, to be reminded of how we are in relation to one another, given that we are located in different parts of the United States. Also knowing that as Indigenous people, we have relations across the world, and in understanding the things that anchor us to knowing who we are. I heard very strongly from the stories that were shared, messages connected to our culture, to our heritage, to our lands, to our people, all things that inform the way that we have resilience, informed also by our ancestors who have been here before us and have endured so much to allow us to be here today. And so for that reason, I again want to share my acknowledgement and appreciation to both Arnold and Lyle for sharing your stories. I'm thankful for that. As Lee had indicated, I am Hopi from the village of Munkapi. I represent the Water Coyote clan. I myself have not served in the armed forces, but have family members and cousins who have served in the military. I'm also assistant professor here at NAU. My background has been in serving students with disabilities in K-12 settings. So I have formerly been a special ed teacher and director in Indigenous schools. I then returned to school to complete my doctorate degree in special education, then returned to NAU. One of my first jobs in returning was to be a vocational rehabilitation specialist with the AverTac project, and I served with them for about 3 years until 2019, which is when I left to be a faculty member in the College of Education. But my background has continually been in identifying ways that we can leverage our culture and language to address all the inequities and disparities that are encountered by our relatives who experience living with disabilities in our tribal communities that include both our rural communities and then also our urban communities. And as you all know, there is so much work that needs to continue to happen, particularly as we think about our current circumstances happening here in our local community societies with our tribal communities, but also nationally. There is much more work to be done. So I encourage all of us to really think about the ways that we can act as advocates, utilize the stories that we heard today, stories from our communities, the languages, the ceremonies to give us the strength that we need to push forward and allow space and create space for our future generations so that they may also carry the torch for our people on behalf of our people to sustain who we are as Indigenous people. And so I just also want to say thank you to Lee and the AverTech team for inviting me today. I was asked to share some flute music. And so I'm going to do that with everyone here today. The songs that I share are not written songs. They're not rehearsed. It really just comes from a lot of the energy that is in the room at the moment, in this case, our virtual room. I also am a participant in our Hopi flute dance ceremonies. And so in the Hopi culture, it connects us to our history as we think about in Hopi, our stories about the Balalukan, which is the water serpent, and it plays a significant role in telling the story of how humankind was saved. And so in that regard, I want to also recognize our relations to the four-leggeds, to those in the water, to those that stand outside all around us, that we're also connected to. So I want to play this song, and as I do so, it's honoring our veterans today, also honoring the communities that we come from, and also just think about, you know, the things that bring us strength, and how we want to continue emulating that for those that are around us, and send all those good thoughts out to everyone participating today. So I'm going to start that now. Thank you very much, everyone. I'll turn it over to Lee.
Okay, thank you, Darold, for providing us with that very moving music. Brought a lot of emotions. Thank you for your words of wisdom, encouragement for us to continue as strong Native Americans. Again, I thank Lyle and Arnold for being with us today. I want to make certain that we continue to look out for each other's, that as we offer our daily prayers, that we keep each and every one of you in mind. And I mentioned earlier that we also honor today in remembrance of those veterans who have gone on or did not return back home, and to offer the prayers that our Creator also protect our Native veterans, and not only Native veterans, but all those individuals who are serving us right now, so that we can enjoy our freedom, so that we can enjoy what we may take for granted each day, the rising of the sun, the environment that surrounds us, the relationship that we still have, whether it's in person or through virtual settings such as this. I also want to tell Darold that in his own way, he has made a difference on the Hopi Reservation in providing services, providing the encouragement to help individuals with disabilities and their families that may know not where to turn at times. So he has made a difference not only on Hopi, but during his time here with Avertech. He has certainly shared of who he is and what he represents, and continue to learn about our culture. He does come from a traditional family, so when we have our private discussions, we don't necessarily have to say everything in distinct words because we know what we're talking about. And I know that he's going to go into a pretty powerful village leader and hopefully one day serve as our tribal chairman. I indicated earlier that if we could review the comments that were shared, we can do that. We have about 15 more minutes to go. Ava or Jamie? And anyone else who wants to share with us, and we can let you in to do that with us today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gaseoma, for your words of wisdom, for the historical information that you shared with us today. Dr. Joseph, Darold, thank you so much for that beautiful flute music. I could just feel my body just relaxing as you played, and the honor that you were bestowing on our Native veterans that joined us today. And again, thank you to Lyle Cook and Arnold Emanuel for being with us today and sharing their personal stories. But I'd like to open this up now. If there's anyone in the audience who either served or had a connection to someone who served their country, if you would like to share with us today their story, I would love for us to open this portion up for anyone that would like to share to do that. By show of hands, is there anyone that has a family member, a close friend, or someone that they know that they would like to honor today, just a show of hands. If you know someone that's a veteran, I'm just going to raise my hand because yes, there's lots here today. Yeah. Thank you all so much for honoring them today as well. Wayne, do you have anything you'd like to add to today's ceremony and celebration of our Native veterans?
There's nothing to add. I just really appreciate and respect the folks that talked today. Thank you for your words and Lyle was one of my first mentors when I started in Avers community. So it's always good to hear his words, and Arnold, it's nice to always hear from you as well. So just thank you for everybody, and then Darold, of course, it's great to hear from Darold all the time, and like I said in my chat, I'd always laugh when Darold follows Lee because he has to adjust the camera or the microphone, and it's always good to see those two standing next to each other. So, Julie, I see your hand up. I don't know if you wanted to talk or.
I was just typing in the chat there. I served in the Marine Corps on active duty from 1990 to 2005. I am the Klamath Tribes director for the AVARS program, and I would do it again. I've had many family members that were in the service. You brought up Chief Joseph. His brother Olacott is my great grandfather. So it passed down as that warrior spirit. You hear that very often when it comes to tribal circles, and passing down generational warrior spirit. And I continue to hang on to that belief of community, supporting community, even through the modern times. And we reflect and we acknowledge the past histories of service that Native Americans have served, and knowing that we were the forced assimilation came across from east to west. So it impacted and affected tribes differently out of rates, decades long rates, into the hundreds of years since the late 1400s. I really appreciated the slideshow and the historical timeline that you set out, beginning when tribes first became a part of service. It was into the late 1870s that my family was involved and I'm part of several different tribes in the Pacific Northwest. I am enrolled Umatilla. I was born and raised in the Klamath tribes. I'm a descendant of Klamath and Roscoe, the Cayuse tribe, and Supiaq into the Chugach range. So I have a long descendancy and family members that have served along the way. My uncles, my father wasn't able to serve. He got in a motorcycle wreck when he was in high school, so he wasn't able to go to Vietnam. But my older uncle, Emery Bettles, he served as a doc in the Navy and worked with the Marines. And two of my uncles, Cecil Bettles, he never recovered from the Agent Orange syndrome, and he passed shortly within 3 years of returning from Vietnam. And my other uncle, Quinton, have recently passed just 3 years ago. He also served in the United States Marine Corps. I just wanted to share out. I wasn't trying to take the stage or anything, but if I could respect anybody, it's the legacy and the historical information, that oral history that our families can continue to pass down. It's really, really hard for a lot of military members to speak about it, but I think it's dependent upon each veteran to ensure that their families understand what that warrior spirituality is. It doesn't mean that you win at everything that you attempt and succeed at. It means that your willingness to give to the betterment of your own community or your family. So thank you for letting me share. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Julie.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a great question in the chat box. I'm gonna read this from Sonara Schaefer. I'd like to ask, because I was on the understanding that it was just the Navajo code talkers. I was wondering, since there were different tribes as code talkers, did they all use and learn one code, or did each tribe have their own personalized codes?
Each tribe had their own codes based on their language, and as I understand, throughout that particular time period, the codes were never broken. As I mentioned as well, that in addition to the three tribes I shared with you, there were other tribes who also served as code talkers, and it would be a good way to recognize them at gatherings such as today.
That was so interesting. Yeah, that was a great question, Sonara. Lee, I believe we were going to put up a survey or just a questionnaire, maybe. I don't think it's a survey, just a questionnaire.
Jamie, can I interrupt you real quick? Sorry, I don't mean to be rude, but Lyle, I saw that you unmuted. Did you want to add something?
Well, Lee kind of covered it. Yeah, because there was in regards to that question of the code talkers, I can't remember if it was 20 or 30 totally different tribes that each had their own code talker.
We'll get together.
Created. And so that was a good question, because everybody, the Navajo code talkers are the most, how would you say, talked about in news and whatever. But a lot of the tribes, like I said, they had their own code talkers, and there was different. They created a way how they conversed with one another to report, whatever was going on, tanks, people moving in, or something like that. So that was one I was very pleased when I was doing the research that one of my grandpas on my mother's side was a code talker from our tribe. And so in South Dakota, there was quite a few code talkers from World War I and World War II. Majority were World War II. So I appreciated the other Kola that shared besides me today. And like I said, I was running around, and so I came back and I joined on real quick. One of the things during my time of service, a lot of you hear about the Cold War. Whenever there's no, how would you say it? No war going on, big war going on, we're still in, they call it the Cold War. And that's just, everybody kind of hears about Russia and the things they're trying to do. So that's what I'm considered as a Cold War veteran, but also I served during the Lebanon and Grenada era. So I'm an era veteran. So those two things happened towards the end of my military career. And when they're talking about the killed in action, that brought back to me my uncle. He served in Vietnam, and he was killed in action on October 27th, 1966. He served in the Army. So those are just kind of jogged my memory as he was sharing his story too. So that's all I wanted to share. All right.
Thank you, Lyle. Lee, you're on mute, but I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Lyle, for sharing your story. We're pretty much close to the conclusion of today's webinar. If you could take a moment to complete our short evaluation survey that you see on the screen. Your responses to our survey makes us realize the effectiveness of our virtual training and technical assistance. And also, when you provide us with your recommendation, we make sure that we follow up through what you are sharing with us, that we could improve the way we provide our education, TA, our intensive technical assistance, and also our conference presentation. In some places, it's probably already in the afternoon. We're hitting about close to 11:30 here in Arizona. So for the remainder of the day, take care, hug your loved ones, and keep in contact.